obviously the first place to start with like colleges. I mean, we all of us started from like the US News World Report and niche and stuff, right? That's like, because I came into TISB in 11th grade not knowing anything about college admissions whatsoever. So the only handle I had was, beta rank kya hai? So I was looking through all that stuff. I mean, that's a good place to start because it gets you a basic idea of like where colleges are situated, what the, and that's what kind of what I used to start based on, like, because you also have search based on, major and degree, um, specifically kind of degrees that you're going to be interested in and stuff. So when I came in, I was originally looking at economics itself, which is pretty broad. Um, but then I started moving more into out, because the thing with US News and World Report as well as niche is that even though they're really helpful, niche in particular, because it gives you, the stuff that other people in the schools are actually experiencing. Um, it's a huge mistake. I think Sushi will agree, like, to get stuck with that.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that he's definitely right because I think like in the beginning, what both of us and I think a lot of people do is that you start looking at universities that are in your reach section of your list, and then you just look at whether it's Ivies or any other top schools or any schools that
Yeah.
you think are kind of top for you, and that's the kind of stuff you get on the ratings. But after that there's like much more to build on, and then you sort of have to like make your list into three parts, as in reach, match, and safeties. And then you do way more
Yeah.
in-depth research on different platforms, and then figure out like how you're going to fill in schools for each one, because obviously it's very important. You can't simply apply to schools that are reach for you yourself, like your preference.
The degrees within colleges and the specialties you're going for within colleges can vary wildly in terms of whether that's a reach or a match. Another factor is, how many people they accept from India, which is also like a big thing.
Yeah, and also like to add to that part where he said about the specialty, something that I also took into account is that you should look at how the school's entire academic, for the academic side, you should look at how the school is structured academically, in the sense that, for example, I applied to U Chicago not only because it's definitely so good for economics, but also because they have a core curriculum just like Columbia, and there's a lot of emphasis on that in that school, and I found that really attractive. Whereas some people don't want to spend a year and a half just doing studies in different kinds of disciplines, learning arts and literature and things like that. So I think that's another thing you should keep in mind, because it's going to take a lot of your time, and it's going to take a lot of effort when you go to college. I think personally, first obviously is the academics and the kind of course that's offered. Whether some schools have, like, suppose if you want to do economics, they have with finance, things like that. So that's number one. And then number two is the other vibe of the school, in the sense that are they sports
Yeah.
oriented? Are they arts oriented? Do they have, like, what are their special other departments? Because you're not only going to college, especially in the US, you're not going there just for your academics. You're going to go for many other things, so you want to look at things like that. And yeah, like for a very good example would be, for example, Northwestern is amazing for economics, but it also has a huge art scene, so that's something that could be attractive for some students. So I'm sure Hari can tell you a bit more about the other categories. So I think definitely one thing is, after you've done your basic research and you've looked at the university sites, you've looked at niche, things like that, I think it's really important to speak to students who either attend the university or they um, have some knowledge about it, whether they're seniors and they researched a lot about it when they were applying, anything like that. Because once you speak to students over there, there's a huge difference between how universities are portrayed on their websites and what the real culture is. And what everyone needs to keep in mind, which I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people don't do now, is that yes, there is some stuff which is straight up hard facts that are on your paper, like, okay, you're going to be able to do this major and that and xyz, but what's important is, are you going to be able to be happy there? Are you going to be able to do stuff? Like, if you're not going to choose a school where the environment is exactly right for you, then it's not gonna then you're not going to really be able to succeed. So speaking to students is a huge thing, and I definitely did that for all my universities. Yeah.
And yeah, like there's plenty of resources for you to reach out to those people as well. I mean, like this exact thing we're doing this for, the like the Mentor Me is a huge example of that. They've had a lot of panels with people from these schools, and it's important to try and figure out, like, you just honestly, all of us DISB seniors, we've been in your shoes before. If there's any juniors watching this, like right now, we're not gonna be like, oh yeah, blow you off. And like a final thing is just, this is a very, very informal note and to salt, but like college Reddits in general, not like the college, like that's different matter, but each college generally has like their own Reddit, and going through it kind of gives you an idea of like what the vibe of the social scene is.
Yeah.
If you can't get a hold of students, because like the kind they put up, the kind of posts they make, the kind of lingo they use, um, that's a really good way of kind of figure out like, will I fit into the kind of discourse and the kind of conversations and stuff they have here. Of course, even, a lot of that happens through acclimatization naturally, but like it is important to just have a look at that.
Even YouTubers can give you a lot of information about what colleges
Yeah.
are like, and like do not underestimate looking at the importance of looking at the college as a whole, and literally making use of all these resources that especially DSV students have. So like I would say definitely explore everything, and then only decide on which college you really want to go to.
You find like a lot of like sort of Instagram pages and Facebook pages for the like a lot
Yeah.
of clubs and groups in colleges. So that's another thing to look at.
And I think you can also write to admissions officers of universities. Like there's no, even when you're applying
Yeah.
and things like that, I think you can write to the information offices. Like there's lots of resources on the website. So I would say that just look at all of that and then, make your list.
Taking either option 3 or 2, i.e., like a realistic match or a realistic reach, does give you a lot of latitude for trying to figure things out in your RD, and it gives you a huge amount of breathing room.
Okay, so I applied REA to Harvard, and we all know like how Howard is. So you can literally, I was not confident. I didn't think that I was gonna get in. So it definitely wasn't any of the other categories Hari said. So it wasn't like I was applying to a school which was slightly like, oh, I have a chance, I have a possibility of getting in. An example of that would be Duke, for example. So like Duke is definitely super hard to get in, but the fact that I got into the RD round made me realize that they really value their early application. Oh, that's one more thing. Like, check out some universities value if you apply early to them, they give you preference. Harvard, for example, does
Yeah.
not care like that much, and Duke does care a lot. So if I applied early, I can say like to some extent that I would have had a good shot. But with Harvard, it was completely like unpredictable. But I really, it was my dream school, and I thought that like I'm gonna go all in. So that's what I did for my early, and I gave it my all. I spent 2 months on that app, and I finished it, and that actually increased a lot of my load for my regular, because like obviously I got deferred, so I didn't have any sort of thing to bank on. So unlike Hari, I couldn't just apply to few colleges and give all my attention to it. I had to apply to a lot of colleges, but I did not regret giving all in for my number one college. So I would say that these are two different strategies. You can definitely go for it, but a disclaimer is that when you're applying, really compare your scores to what the particular university has, because every university has certain requirements and you have to sort of meet them before you're even in the race, I would say. So I would say just think about all of those things and then apply, and don't just sort of apply to university if you're waiting for SAT scores to come out or anything like that, because then if you, so for example, if you apply to ED to a certain university and that is not exactly the highest on your list, but it's just something that you feel like with your current scores you can only get into that college, so then you apply to it and then you get in. If you get like higher scores or anything like that later, then you're bound to it, and then you're just sort of going to regret it. So kind of think about your strategy really carefully over there. Also, one more thing I just remembered since he said the EDA thing. For anyone who is like confused, EA is when you apply early, but you are not supposed to bind to the program. And ED is that you have to, if you get in, you have to bind to it. And there's another one that's REA. I don't know if everyone knows about
Yeah.
this, but this is restricted early action. And as far as I know, only three schools have it. That's Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, maybe Princeton also, I'm not sure. But in this program, you cannot apply to any other university in your early round. You can only apply to that college. But if you get in, you have an option to not go. Whereas for many other early action schools, that's EA, what people do is they apply to one EA that's sort of higher to their list, and then they apply to many other safety EAs. So in the first round itself, you have some universities, you've gone into your safeties, and then you can sort of stop freaking out. So if you're doing REA, then you can't apply anywhere else. So just be mindful of that.
So just basically look into what the specifics are of the restricted early action as much as you can.
We discussed when we were discussing about essays, from what I've seen with all my friends and other applicants, there are broadly three kinds of essays that you can go by. By you'll understand what I mean in terms of structure. So one, that's the essay that many people do on a certain project or an accomplishment that they've had, and then they, like, they write it, whatever your creativity is, you write it in different terms. But in terms of like what you're talking about, it's either a project or accomplishment, or it's sort of an abstract concept or thoughts slash emotions, feelings, whatever. And then the third one is like an incident or something like that that sort of had an effect on you. And I'll talk about the second one, which is abstract concept slash emotion, because I personally did that. So for my essay, the one structure, this in terms of the like writing structure, it was a bit like a narrative, like a story, but it wasn't too much like a story, because what you can go wrong in that situation is that you talk a lot more about other things than yourself. And the one thing you have to be mindful about is you only have 650 words, and that's really less. So in that entire amount, you have to fit as much information as you can about yourself. So my entire, while although it was a narrative, the entire narrative was about every line said something new about me. It was either an emotion I felt, a thought I had, a situation I was in, anything like that. And I knew that from the beginning, I knew that I wanted to structure my essay around something that set me apart from the rest of like the other people who are competing with me. And I mean, of course, the entire pool is so diverse, so you have no idea. And the only way that you can really make sure that you're being diverse is that you're really being true to yourself. And I know that a lot of kids are like, oh, I know someone who got into like Princeton by writing this essay which was fake and some shit happened. But like honestly, it if you want to play a safe bet and you want to increase your chances of getting in, I would say really talk about yourself, really introspect and focus on what makes you different. And I'll give you an example of that. It could be something super simple. Like for me, I thought that yes, when I was applying to all my universities, I thought that like, okay, there are going to be a lot of people competing with me, and they're all going to have amazing grades, they're going to have amazing extracurriculars, they're going to have amazing recommendations, everything is going to be like on the same level. So I thought that the only thing that could possibly set me apart is my own character, which is that like I wrote about how I used to be a super busy person, and I used to be super involved, and there was an incident where I got disconnected with the world. And I really focused on how one incident, which was very simple, brought me back to my own core personality, which is that I really care about the relationships in my life, the people in my life, and I enjoy having fun. Like literally, that was the core message in my essay, was that that's the kind of person I am. I'm not focused on one thing, and I'm not going to only be focused on things that sort of are the typical successful things about a student. What I really value in my life is the relationships, people, and I enjoy having fun, and that's what I look forward to in the rest of my life. So something that simple a message, and you can bring it out in so many different ways. Like you could use an incident which could be as simple as taking a walk in a park, and you can bring it out really powerfully and connect it to yourself. But you just have to like, so I my essay completely focused on abstract thoughts and things like that that I had, revolving around an incident, and the setting was like my school. That's how like every day sort of thing it was. So I would say that don't look at big ideas, look at small things, focus on the most simplest things in life, and then just think about how you can remove the most out of that. So one conversation, how can you talk the most out of it, how can you make an impact on the other person, and like just that in terms of like what the essay was. But in terms of the style, I would say keep it simple. If you're not someone who is a super exceptional writer, and I'm not, like seriously, I knew that I couldn't handle that, and I was just injecting words which were super superfluous, and you just don't need that kind of stuff in your essay. All you need to make sure is that you're writing in simple English, really clear, concise, and you're putting across your point. That's all. Like that's all that matters. I haven't seen a single university that is not looking for passion in a student. So definitely, if you're not writing about, like, you can write about something you're passionate about, or you can just write about yourself. it's all like on the same area, but you just need to make sure that you're putting the most amount of yourself in that essay. So, and I've seen a lot of successful essays, and you don't need to be worried that, oh, like I'm going to write about running and everyone writes about running. Like people like, I'm sure
Yeah.
Augusta won't mind me saying this, but he's going to Yale and he wrote about running, and it's just like, it's something that matters so much to him. And I'm sure you have 1,000 running essays every year, but he definitely got selected because it fit in his application. So don't try too hard to look for topics, just introspect and you're like fine. I personally felt that I should have learned this after my process, and that is you really have to be patient. Not everyone gets in their early application, and in fact, most people in our grade got deferred. We all were expecting like great, like oh everyone's gonna get in and stuff, but like we all got deferred and we were all shook. But then we all had our own time when regular came, and yes, like many people got rejected from universities that were their dream schools. Even I got rejected, but in the end you do get into some school that's going to be good for you. And the toughest part about dealing with this entire thing that everyone should understand, that everyone else is going through too, is that like you might not end up with the university that you thought was perfect for you, but you just have to trust the process. And once you do get anything, just focus on that university and look at it in a positive manner, and give everyone their space, because like everyone is going to be feeling anxious, stressed out. There's so many deadlines, so there's no need for anyone to sort of um like get into someone else's personal space and bother them, or anything at all, like ask them, oh how was this, how was that. Like just let everyone be in your own space, just relax. And like you don't need to, obviously you should definitely celebrate if you get in. Let your friends celebrate, and don't be put down by other people's celebrations. You should just know that like you'll have your own time and you'll have your own success. It could be really late, but it will come, and whatever it is, there will be something really good in it, because all the students from TISP, absolutely all the universities they go to are really amazing. There are so many resources in each university that all you need to do is just focus on that once you have that in hand, and just be grateful for it.
I mentioned that I got into Georgetown and then I applied for 4 colleges. Those were like, I was Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Brown, and those were reject, waitlist, respectively. So, and like I woke up at 3 a.m. just for those results. And like when I got them, I was like, shit. But essentially, the biggest thing that I learned was that it's very easy to say this, but it's not a reflection of your personality or your competence or who you are as a person. Um, and that's just because the process is, as much as we want to trust the process, um, everyone in it is almost as confused as we are. Admissions officers have huge amount of workloads. The process cannot capture you as a person, despite how much the US and other places, because we both applied to the US, try to get the most holistic view of your application and you as a person as they can. But just because that's the attempt doesn't mean that because you failed, you don't deserve to get there as a person, right? And one of the things that really took time, but that I sort of understood, was that you have to trust yourself and trust that the best you can is good enough, and the best you can, as long as you put in your all, that's all you can really count on, and that's enough to be proud of.
Yeah, and I would say for rejection, I thought of this really stupid thing. So I'm going to share this because it's a really immature thought, and I'm sure people have thoughts like this. So what I thought was that after I finished applying to all my universities, and like that entire period was gone, and people started getting acceptances, and they started hearing back from universities. I was the only one from my entire friends group who hadn't gone to a single college for the longest time, because a lot of people applied to many universities which are their safeties as EAs. But because I was stuck with this like REA thing, I didn't apply anywhere. And then I started getting this thought that, oh, like none of my top schools are going to take me because I'm not good enough. And the safeties aren't going to take me because they think I'm not going to come. And the match is just going to be bad luck and I'm going to get nowhere. So like, don't think like that at all. That's stupid. You definitely are going to get somewhere, because that's just how the process is. Like it's not going to make it that you're going to be left out or anything's going to happen so tragically bad to you. But if you do get rejected from a university, I would say that yes, it's okay to feel bad. It definitely is. You should take time to feel bad and, like, make your own, like, sort of peace with the fact that, okay, now I'm not going to be going to this university. But don't feel, I would say, don't, just like Hari said, same point, don't feel disheartened by it at all, because there are so many factors. Like, it's life. That's what life is. There are people paying to
Yeah.
get into universities. There are people who are cheating their way in. There are counselors who are pulling strings. There are all sorts of things that happen. So you cannot control any of those things, and you just have to, like, be strong. And it's literally going to work out. Like, once you go to university, you won't even care like where the hell you applied. So it's okay.
Yeah. And I think an important thing to add here is that as another person seeing your own friend or like someone else going through rejection
Mhm.
from a university, it's important not to impose your experiences on them. Because just because you got, like, for example, just because X person deal with the rejection better than Y doesn't mean that X should expect Y to be okay with it. Like, give people their space, give people their time, and be there as a resource for them to vent if they need to. Um, because it's very easy for people who took rejection very easily, because everyone's wired differently. Um, People who took it easily might go like, that person's being a crybaby. Well, people who are really genuinely upset might go, that person just doesn't care. But those kind of leaps are not helpful to yourself, let alone anyone else, because then you're just feeling into a delusion that makes your own situation worse. So I'd say just make sure you give that level of empathy to people, and
Don't
that's
judge.
extremely important. Don't judge. Being like judgmental in the college application process means you've let the system break you down, and that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Well, I mean,
So
I don't really have an answer, so Aishi has one, I think.
oh yeah, I have one answer. So see, now if you're like Hari and you've played your strategy really well, then you're not going to regret, because you already got into an amazing university and then you applied to the others. So, but I would say that after I was done with the application process, I regretted not applying to Stanford, and that's because it's not like I definitely don't think I was going to get in, but it's just there's a sense of satisfaction that you have after applying to university. And I think everyone should have that satisfaction. Like, I had enough of it, but I mean, like, the only reason I say this is that um, after you're done with the process, there are many there's a time where you have to select between some offers that you have, whether they're two or three or more or even one. Then you have to, like, think really hard about a lot of different factors before you commit to a university. And after, like, looking at all of those factors, I really felt that, like, I chose Duke. And over here, I would make a disclaimer and say that no one should get blinded by Ivies or reputation, because I
Yes,
did have some
100%.
offers from Ivies, but I did not choose because I really didn't think that those universities were my vibe, or I was going to do well there. I would be happy there. I didn't think that at all. And when I thought about Stanford, the only reason I felt that was because I felt Duke and Stanford have really similar profiles, except Stanford has a slightly larger name. And it's just like it's in California, and I really want to be in, like, California. That's why. But otherwise, I would say that, like, there's nothing to regret about. All universities are great. There are way too many, like, features that you can, like, even research. So just, be happy and, like, don't think too hard.
One of the biggest things is sort of the not knowing if you would have liked it. They're just not having that avenue, but you have to limit
Yeah,
yourself eventually. Or
Exactly. And, like, TISP allows you to apply to 13 applications. And
in the
if you use
US.
yeah, in the US, sorry. So if you use UC as one, you obviously add plus three more or X number of schools more. But personally, I only used 12 applications. And that was because I thought that the entire process was really stressful for me. And I could not have taken on one more application. Like, my last two
Yeah,
applications were just done 2 days before. And I think in that aspect, everyone needs to figure out how do you manage your time, and, like, how you really want to apply, because it does not, like, applying to all 13 schools is not a thing. It's not cool. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get into more. Just make sure you have a balanced list and apply to as many you can. Like, even if you apply, I know people who apply to 8. Like, you just need to know the right fit for you. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Just, like,
yeah.
and focus on your IB deadlines, because if you, like, screw up your exams, then you're not going anyways, right? So just
Yeah, for sure. And like just gauge what you know you can do within the IB curriculum. Because like if you're in the 11th grade and you're struggling for time management, don't take too many applications on your plate. Because 12th grade, I mean, it gets easier once you're past your like BIEs and stuff, but like the first bit is a hell of a grind. So based on how you know yourself and how you think you're doing the IB, just use that to gauge how many applications you're doing. Because of course there's an inverse relationship between how many you apply to and like the likelihood you get in somewhere. But just find the balance that's right for you specifically. And don't follow what your friends are doing. It's not going to be right for you necessarily. Okay, I guess I'll start with this because I mean, look, it's inherently hard to answer this question because it's very easy. Because like we know what we think our X factor was, but we have no idea whether that's what the admissions officer saw as well. Okay, basically the best way to explain why I thought my essay was I kept going through redrafts and trying to rephrase things. But the best way that I found to know whether my essay really hit the mark was 2 litmus tests, basically. Like one is if I read that, I put myself in like the shoes of someone I never knew. And like, if I read that essay, especially mine, because mine was very personal and it was very, it wasn't exactly happy per se, but it led to something that I thought was a very beautiful message, at least for me. Can that person who I've never met come into a conversation with me and understand me almost as well as acquaintances or friends do? Right? Because like the one litmus test is like, show it to your friends, and if your friends can tell it's you by looking at the essay, then that's cool. But then the admissions officer is not your friend. They never met you. They never will. They have 2 minutes to form an impression. If they can read that and be transported into your brain for even 5 seconds, then you've done your job. And and transporting like whoever read it into that like hospital room that was the focus of my essay, that was what I thought was like the X factor that made me go, okay, this is an essay I'm happy with.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of someone who's read Hari's essay, I just read it, so I'm just going to add a point. I think he's really right in the fact that he did put effort in transporting that person to where he was, and then towards the end is where he actually, like put very explicitly the things that he, meant to put across in the essay. And I would say that like if you are able to do so, yes, you should use yes, you should try to really make that, get that person into your personal space, and like that person really reading that truth and like that authentic essay will really make the difference. And I would say that for my essay it's a very similar thing, that i I think the X factor was that I was very vulnerable in the essay. Like it was,
Yeah.
yeah. And even mine was, okay, I haven't spoken in detail about my essay, so I should probably give context because I think people are getting confused. But so the essay was that I wrote about how when one of my friends passed away in the last year or a half or something like that, how that incident woke me up and it made me realize that there were certain things in the past year and 2 that I had shut out in the race towards success, making sure that my apps are so good, my grades are so good, I'm on top of my sports, things like that. There were a lot of things I shut out, like not spending enough time with my friends or not spending enough time with my family and not relaxing, not enjoying myself, things like that. I think I kind of like forgot a lot of those things like subconsciously. And that friend of mine was a very, very playful and like literally a very like cheery person, and he always like used to tell me things like, if I would be stressing out that, oh, will I get that 45, which you shouldn't do, by the way, just, but like if I ever did something like that, he would say something like, man, why do you care about 45, we'll get you 46. And he always make these jokes which lighten up really serious things that people think are serious. But in that essay I talk about how I realized that for me, that sort of superficial in an aspect, that kind of thing wasn't really what I wanted, and I didn't really define it as me or success. And in that incident I realized, and I had that deep realization, and till today I'm still holding on to that even when I have something that is really like, even in college and things like that, I'm always mindful about the fact that I enjoy being with people, I enjoy like going out, I enjoy having fun, and I should always keep a good amount of that in my life and not get too carried away and things like that. So in that entire essay I was very I actually found it hard to write that essay after a point, because I was actually being so truthful to things I felt. And I never really thought that like while writing an essay, I would actually get emotional or something like that, because I mean, it's an essay, but then I actually felt really like, I felt afraid that like this person is finding out so much about me. So I think the X factor in both the essays was that you really have to get deep down into yourself, and whatever you felt in a certain moment, it doesn't have to be something sad. It could be something happy, it could be something passionate. You just have to put it out there in simple words, in like simple English, and that's all. Like that's all that it takes for that person to really get like hooked onto you.
Yeah, and just like a minor side note there. Like at the end of the day, there is a purpose for like both of us to put the admissions officer into our shoes in that moment, because a lot of common app drafts or even essay drafts that I see as they start, um, they're very focused on what you're trying to portray. We're trying to spell out like, you know, um, what the lessons are. But the whole point of bringing people into your mind is so that when they get to the same conclusions that you could have just stated in a sentence, like if I want to state the takeaway from my essay in a sentence, it would be the little things in life matter because they define your experiences and your thoughts, and that whole kaleidoscope of your experiences really drives you forward. That's one sentence, but it could be a throwaway, right? It just because you think your essay might be cliche, because everyone has their own instance, doesn't mean it is. Because when you bring the admissions officer or whoever's reading your essay into your head, then the idea is to give that takeaway the meaning that you ascribe it, and that itself sets it apart. So don't shy away from an essay, specifically if you think, and everyone's going to cover this topic and it's like it's common and it's not impressive enough. That doesn't matter. Like the only thing that matters is, can you get the person reading the essay to understand what you want to portray with the same significance you hold to it?
Yeah, exactly. Your significance to it. That's the X factor for every good essay.
Yeah. So the IB has a very, very interesting way of breaking your bringing your brain down to the basic level of, I can't do this anymore. um but one thing that I noticed, I mean, one thing that like everyone I think should keep in track when trying to balance the IB in college is, don't, like, number one, don't make two separate schedules. Like, don't say, okay, my college deadline is this, I'll work xxx, and then have your IB schedule separate and say, okay, I'll work with that, because naturally they're going to come into conflict. And if you're trying to choose between IB and college to do on a particular day, is just going to make your mental state more frazzled. One way that I found, but another thing with essays is they don't function like traditional work. Like the rest of your application activity section, you can do whenever, that's objective. But your like essays, at least for most people I know, they can't just come out in the right form when you set a time, like, I'm going to write essay from 5 to 6 p.m. every day. Because you might not feel in the mood, you might not be in the right state of mind. So I just say, like, application stuff you can definitely time in a schedule in such a way as to like fill in between the gaps in your IB work. But with your college essays, just make sure that you have time in the day for yourself to be free, to reflect. And because like the vast majority of my essay was written between 12 and 1 p.m. on a Saturday home from dorm, because I was bored, lunch wasn't ready, and I was at my laptop, right? Because even having free time, if you're spending it with yourself, not if you're going, to a party, or if you're going to play something like sports, if you just have that time to yourself to read or to chill with your own mind, that can be a college essay writing experience the moment you have something that you really reflect on, as long as you use it productively.
Yeah, I would build off of that and say that, like, when you're making your schedule for the IB and the applications, just make sure make sure it works for you. And what I mean by that is that I personally feel, I know that I always feel really inspired after I go on a run. So like that's just one thing. There are many different things that can inspire you. A certain place could inspire you, things like that. But what I did a lot of times was, when I was at home and I had to write my essays, which is during the Diwali and the Shara break, and even December, I used to always go on runs and then come back. And during the run, I would get really like stimulated. I would come back and I would just brain dump. Like that's literally what I did. Like if I'm in the middle of a day and doing something and someone is like saying something and I suddenly feel like, oh, I got an idea, I'll just quickly write it down somewhere, and then I'll put it into my essay. And I think like that's totally how essays work. So there's no schedule as such you can do for essays. Just make sure you put across time that you're in good mood. Like I like mornings, I like early mornings. So I used to wake up, chill, write, go back to sleep, things like that. So then that, and also I would say that don't underestimate your IB submissions, because I did that and I had the worst. I'm definitely the worst organized worst person when it comes to organization for the IB, because no, for the applications, because what I did was I spent way too much of time on my Common App, and I was still doing my Common App, and it was like a month to my Howard deadline, which was in November, I think. November, October, I don't remember now, but that's the early deadline. So I was still doing one app. I had not touched any other apps in the summer. I had not done a lot of college work. And then, like, right when the entire college and IB thing got like super intense, that's when I spent the entire December break only doing college apps. Like I literally, like, shit you not, I did only college apps. And the minute I got to school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like do IB assignments now. It's okay, it's all gonna be good. But it was not good. Okay. Like I really struggled in that entire thing. I had to overwork. I had to, and I saw Hari. He was chilling. Okay. Like he was relaxing in that. Like he was so that's good organization. I saw him and I'm like, man, like how would that feel? Like I was running around,
No,
I had many responsibilities and work, and it's okay, like I got through it, but I would still say it's not a good way to go. It really has a bad effect, like a bad impact on your mental health. So I would say plan
yeah.
out strategically, give importance to your IB and your college apps, and make sure that you sort of prioritize everything. That's it.
Yeah. And like again, I keep adding minor side notes. It's a bad habit of mine. But like be honest with yourself as to how much you know you can work. Because like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna toot my own horn, but I'm a nerd, massive nerd. So I have these phases where I can overwork. So like the reason I actually saw me chilling was because like because every time I got to dorm, right? Because school was my chill time. When I got to dorm, I had like 2 hours free, and then I spent like 3 or 4 hours just rotating between work, right? Which is not ideal, but that's how I function. That's how it works for me. And some people I know work extremely well in the early morning, like Ayushi does. Some people work extremely well late at night. Some people work well in different circumstances. Just be honest with yourself about the environment that's going to make you do well, because you're going to see people who look like they have everything figured out around you, and they don't. Most of the time, we all don't, because we're
No
all in the
one
same boat.
does, kind of like literally. And I
Yeah.
would say don't also like have fun. It is at the end of the day your last year of school, and I made like, because of my boarding and because of my friends, it was impossible for me to not waste time for all the what I would say right things, which is like we used to fool around and have fun. And I never stopped like either going on runs or playing a basketball match or playing football with our entire grade, things like that. Like do it, it keeps you refreshed. Sleep, eat well. I know everyone says that, oh, everyone keeps saying this like stuff all the time, but if you can really learn how to properly schedule your way, including times when you're having fun, you're relaxing, and you're like taking care of your sleep or whatever matters to you, then you really have had a successful IB year. And I think that's way more like successful, because once you come to college, you're gonna have to do that. And I'm like struggling to now make my own life schedule for the first time. So I would say that just really like try to do that right now.
Like, so if you know that you can get by um, through your own research, and you truly know that, um, then you can do without an external counselor. But if you think that you're starting to struggle, it's never a bad thing except on your wallet. And even then, you don't have to go for the big name counselors per se. Um, and like, yeah, that's basically it on that count.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that and provide a different perspective, which is that I had a counselor, but I never went for the big name ones. Now I'm not gonna like try to throw shade on the people who have big name counselors, because my best friend had a big name counselor, and I saw her, like both of us were literally in the same room the entire 1 year. So we know, like I could see what she was doing and what I was doing. So I know how two different kinds of counselors work. But what I personally went for is I went for a counselor who was teamed up with two, and there was a lady who helped with essays. Now, there's a big risk with this, because I know a lot of counselors, you pay money and they write your essays, they fill your application. I think that's really, personally, I think that's stupid. Like, if you're going to have someone else write the essay, they have a very standardized essay writing style, and the college admissions officers can really make out whether it's like a adult speaking or child speaking, no matter how mature you are. And I want to give the only tip I can give from like my counselor, because I really thought she was amazing, is that she used to be an admissions officer at some university, I don't remember, but and she was really like, she never really like sort of focused on making my application look more elaborate or impressive than what it is, in the sense that I know a lot of counselors say, okay, write your activities like this and make it sound like this and use these kind of words and things like that. You everyone takes a different approach to navigate through this entire process, and you don't need to feel pressurized by someone else. I went for this approach, and I went for the approach of simplicity, and she always emphasized on the fact that you have to do all this. The only thing I'm going to help you with is I'm going to help you edit your grammar in your essays, or I'm going to help you give you feedback, or if you're missing out on some really critical detail like logistical detail on your application, then I'll point that out or whatever. But I felt that I needed help in writing, and that's where she sort of pointed out and told me that, okay, you are not writing clear enough. And her only tip to me, which I felt was very difficult for me to sort of stick to, because a lot of people around me were doing the opposite, because they had different kinds of counselors who emphasized on, making it look impressive, was that she said that the admissions officer is going to take max 2 minutes to look at your application. And this is the truth, this is a fact, because she was one. Don't try to don't write in a way that it makes them lost in big words. You have 2 minutes to present yourself and market yourself, and you need to be simple and to the point in every small thing. There's no need for you to get pressurized by things like, Miss Priya used to say that, oh, you should have there was this academic achievement corner where apparently you write things like awards you got or Olympiads you won, things like that. She wanted every part of the application filled, but my counselor said you do not do that, because it clearly says it's academic. There's no point of you putting like Trinity certificate or things like that in there. So don't overdo it in the fear that like, oh, I'm going to miss out and everyone's trying to amp up their application, things like that. No, just whoever you chose to listen to, if it's yourself or someone else, just stick with that, and it will all like work out. And personally for me, it worked out really well. And I would say, like, be simple and be honest. That sets you apart, honestly.